Hey, Miles here, milesbecker.com. This video, you're going to learn how to start a podcast in 7 simple steps for under $100. This is by design a simple overview of the process so you can note down all of the steps you need to take, and that'll be your roadmap. If you want deep dive information on any of the bits and pieces I cover here, know that I've got a gigantic resource for you already built at milesbecker.com/podcast. No opt-in required. It's just the content. It's my past videos. It's all written out to go deeper on any of these steps that you're like, I don't really get how to do that. I've probably already taught it, and it's all organized there for you at milesbecker.com/podcast. So let's jump right in. And the first question is, why do you want to start a podcast? Why start a podcast? Generally, there's 2 directions that someone's going to come from to start a podcast. Number one, you're an expert at something. You want to share your industry expertise. You want to deliver a body of work or a body of intelligence, or you want to deliver something to an audience yourself, maybe by yourself or maybe with others on the podcast. Or number 2, you want to position yourself with the current experts in the industry and do interviews of them. Now, the second way works really well if you're a beginner, if you're not yet an industry expert, because it gives you that kind of borrowed credibility of being on the same stage as these experts and the authors. And today's book tour that used to be going to Barnes and Nobles across the country is now simply hopping on a bunch of podcasts. You've probably noticed that. Also, the podcast world is growing at a very, very, very significant rate of speed. The smartphone revolution is what kicked podcasting into the mainstream when we all started walking around with multimedia supercomputers in our pocket. But now today's cars sync so well with podcast devices, and many cars are even getting to the point where they're voice activated. So you simply sit in your car, you start driving, and you tell your car to start playing that podcast for you, and it just automatically happens. You don't even have to touch the device. So these are the technologies that are making it even easier for people to consume podcasts during their commute, which is the biggest time frame when people do consume podcasts. Smart homes is kind of the other side of it, right? The Alexas, the Google Homes, the iHomes, what used to be silent time in the kitchen while your hands are prepping the night's meal can now, just with a quick voice activation, be turned into informational listening time or entertaining listening time. And it's also a very educated and affluent audience. Most podcast listeners have been to some college, have a college degree, and they generally earn above average income levels. So it can be a really great customer base for you as well. So number 1, what's your big idea, right? So the first step, or the first kind of positioning that we talked about on the previous slide, is you, the industry expert. So let's say you're a patent lawyer, you do intellectual property law, and you want to bring in some new high value clients. So you start teaching everything you know about intellectual property law through your podcast, and you know that some of those techies who are driving to and from their jobs in Silicon Valley, stuck on the 101 to 237 interchange in Silicon Valley, they might be listening to you, learning how to better do what they're going to do with their intellectual property. This could bring you clients, right? They want these individuals who want intellectual property help want it from the expert. Who's the expert? It's the person teaching. Where are they hearing the teaching? It's on the podcast. So that's how it works on the first one. The second one is the journey of discovery, where you're not yet an expert. You're going to go find all of the experts, and you, along with the audience member, are going to learn and become experts on this topic together. It's a really powerful positioning, and that's a kind of a good bit for a podcast itself. So being of service to your audience, right? Ultimately, you're creating something your audience values. Now, the first 2 ideas we talked about was expert and teaching based. I do want to note that there's definitely a big segment of nonfiction podcasts, of stories. There's also comedy. Like, there's a huge connection between the world of comedy and the world of podcasting. So delivering value to your audience doesn't always mean educating them. It can also be informing them, entertaining them, etc. Just make sure you're creating what your audience wants, and then figure out, is it going to be just you? Or are you just going to do kind of a 1-person podcast? Seth Godin has the Akimbo podcast, Akimbo, where he just riffs on an idea by himself. And it's a great way to learn and kind of understand how he looks at the world. And he's a really smart marketer. But most other podcasts are someone interviewing another individual. What is your structure going to be? I've done a little bit of a blend. Most of mine are 1 person, but I do a few interviews here and there on this. So once you've got your big idea, it's time to start recording. And you obviously need some sort of hardware in order to record. And this is the point where you could easily go over that $100 budget. The microphone, the arm, the cables, the connectors that I'm speaking to you on right now, just the audio, not even the camera, is $750 or so. But I did not start here, and you definitely don't need to start here. So a USB microphone. There's one on the page. It's made by Audio-Technica. It plugs right into your computer and you're ready to go. And it's a super high quality microphone. Personally, I went with a Plantronics headset. And if you've watched some of my earlier videos, you have surely seen me wearing this exact headset with a microphone down, just doing my thing. I worked in call centers for many, many years. I did customer support and I did inside sales and in the Silicon Valley area. And every single call center I worked at that sometimes had 300 people on a floor used Plantronics as the brand. I trust them greatly. So that thing works unbelievably well. It creates an incredibly high quality of sound value, and it simply plugs into my computer. I used it for probably my first 300 videos or so. That one is maybe $50. Again, I've actually linked to that exact thing on the page, the resource, milesbeckler.com/podcast. And then there's the iRig Mic Lav. So I'm going to show you that right here. This is the other microphone. It is, I think it's $50 maybe. And it's just a little lavalier microphone that plugs in. And this one connects directly into my cell phone. So these were my old talking head videos, was done and run on this microphone here. So you actually can plug that microphone directly into your smartphone and record right there. That takes us to the second part. Once you have a recording hardware, right, a microphone, then where are you actually doing the recording? So GarageBand is a free app that runs on Apple computers. So if you've got a Mac, then you probably have GarageBand, and you literally can record directly into GarageBand. If you're on a Windows machine, a PC like I am, Audacity is a free open source software that allows you to do the audio recording and the audio editing. Zoom.us is a conference call tool, and that's what a lot of people use, and it has a recording system built right in. So you can give someone your Zoom link when you want to interview them. You can interview them in audio or audio and video through Zoom for free. You can record it right there in Zoom, and then you're done, right? So one of these headsets and the free Zoom software, and you're off and running. If you do use your cell phone, which you can easily just plug right in, make sure the microphone you get fits the whatever microphone adapter you have, right? A lot of new iPhones don't have a microphone port. They have the Lightning port. So just be aware of that. Using a voice recorder app, I actually downloaded a separate voice recorder app for my phone, and that's where I record voice on my phone itself. That was a free app that I did. And again, you're creating valuable content for your audience, whether that's entertaining them, informing them, whatever it is. But you start by initiating and doing a recording. You obviously can use Skype if you're doing one-on-ones, but Zoom's built-in recording feature, I just find Zoom to be really actually quite good for that kind of setup. Step number 3, editing. So a podcast, you want to increase your quality as good as you can without driving yourself insane trying to fix everything. So it's really good to take a little bit of time in the timeline and learn how to edit your audio so you can remove the crutch words, the coughing, any sniffles, if the doorbell rings and you need to start over, whatever it is. It's good to do a little bit of post-production work, and you can do that right in your GarageBand or your Audacity, which was free and works on every computer in the world. One of those two would. So it's really good. I think ultimately you will become conscious of your crutch words as you're editing, and you'll see where you stammer, where you stumble, and you'll just get better at the task. So you'll be creating less time required in the timeline. We actually have hired a gentleman who lives in the Philippines. He does all of our audio work. So he pulls out all of the little bits and pieces from my wife's audios. So you can't hire somebody, but again, if you're on a budget, you don't have to. And we did not hire somebody in the beginning. We did all of the work ourselves. Then I like to use an app called Levelator. Now, Levelator allows you to normalize the audio. This is especially important if you're doing an interview where you're interviewing another individual, because sometimes their audio will be really loud and you will be really quiet. So as that podcast goes back and forth, and as that conversation naturally goes back and forth, your listener is going to have like somebody who's really loud, and then somebody who's really quiet, and then somebody who's really loud, and it just makes for a poor listening experience. That's where the Levelator app is. It's a free software application. You can just search for Levelator. It just runs, you drag and drop a WAV file. So once you're done editing the first round, you export a WAV file, drop the WAV file inside of the Levelator program. It runs and does its work. It gives you an output file. I reload that back in the editing software to make my final MP3. And my final MP3, I render at either 96 kilobits per second or 64 kilobits per second. I promise this is the only tech we have to cover, and I've showed you how to do all of this in another video you'll find on milesbeckler.com/podcast. So the rendering MP3 at either 64 or 96 kilobits a second is a way for you to compress the audio file. The less music you have, the less sound effects you have, the more compression you can do. The smaller the number, more compression. It's probably going to default to 144 kbps, which will create a relatively large audio file. When you take that file and you render it out as a 64 kilobit per second, it's going to make a smaller file. And most hosts, the good host, the only host I actually recommend for podcast hosts, they charge you based on how much you upload. So making a smaller file saves you money, and it doesn't mess with the audio quality. You'll probably want to render your first one out in 64 and 96 kbps to listen to it, to see which one sounds better. If you don't notice a difference, go with a smaller one and set it up from there. Finally, you add ID3 tags to the MP3 file. What's an ID3 tag? It's embedding your title, the author, and your image, your actual podcast image, in the file itself. So if somebody is actually downloading it, or when they're listening to it on their phone itself, they're in a position where they're actually going to be able to see your imagery, they're going to see your title, and it's all going to be neat and tidy right there inside of their phone and their device. Then you need to host it, right? So what hosting is actually where we put that MP3 file so it's available for all of the people to download it. Now, you don't ever want to do this on your web server. It will overwhelm your web server. You do want to go pay for actual pro level hosting. I use Libsyn. Libsyn is not the newest, fanciest interface in the world, but it works. It is a bulletproof system, and you only pay for what you upload. So as your downloads increase, you're not paying for the bandwidth that you use. I prefer this way around. Their basic level is $5 per month. What's even cooler, if you use my name, Miles, as your promotional code in Libsyn, you'll get the rest of this month free and the following month for free before getting billed on the next month after that. So I'm recording this on February 11th. So if you signed up right now today, you would get the rest of February for free, you would get all of March for free, and then you would start paying in April. So it gives you a lot of time to get started, to get things going before you start making monthly payments on how much you upload. You'll also know how much you're being uploaded. Then we let Libsyn manage the RSS feed. So RSS is really simple syndication. It is essentially a page of code that you don't need to know anything about or how to decipher, but it runs your podcast feed. So under the Destinations tab inside of Libsyn is where you get your RSS feed. You have your own Libsyn URL. Mine's milesbeckler.libsyn.com. You just put /RSS on that, and that's your RSS feed. You need to have your RSS feed. This is the actual mechanism that allows you to connect all of the different podcasting apps with your MP3 files that are hosted on Libsyn, right? So we've now hosted all of our files on Libsyn, and now we need to go actually connect our files and our Libsyn account with all of our MP3s to the different podcasting apps. That's step number 6. You go submit your feed to all of the apps. Now, you have to manually submit your feed to each of the different apps. Some of them try to go pick it up when they find them, but others don't. So you need to actually go through this process, and you only have to do it once. You have to get it all connected up once. I did it. I think there's 12 or 13 locations that I've actually got my podcast connected to. The most important one is the Apple iTunes store. You go there at podcastconnect.apple.com, and you need to upload and submit it to Apple. Now, they have the strictest requirements, right? So they want to make sure you don't have any links. They want to make sure you don't have any swear words in your titles, etc., etc. It can take up to 10 business days to get approved on the Apple Podcast app. So what a lot of people do is they actually get their Libsyn account started. They get their first 4 or so episodes up on Libsyn, get it connecting with Apple, and then when it shows up live on Apple, go through and add it to all of the other podcast directories, because those, most of them will approve you same day or next day. So Apple's really the one that it hinges on. About 80% of downloads probably come from the Apple iTunes store. Spotify is a new player in the world of podcasting, and they're going all in. They just bought Gimlet, which is a podcast production company. So podcasters.spotify.com, and there's 12 others. And when I say see description, it's the link to my podcast launch page that you'll find. I have a list of the 12 or 13 different places beyond those two to go submit it to, with links to the actual submission page. So once you have your RSS feed, just go to that page and go through each one, submit it out to all of them, and then you'll show up on all of the different apps, because some people use Castbox, and some people use Listen Notes, and some people use Podbean, some people use Apple, some people use XYZ. There's a bunch of different apps for the podcasting world, and that's how you set it all up. Now, I talked about the launch process a little bit. I have a very, very, very specific 4-week launch process that was taught by my friends who run Freedom Podcasting, and their podcasting company has hundreds of millions of downloads from their clients that they manage. They have managed some of the biggest podcasts in the world. Again, that's on the page that has the resources, the whole conversation with them, the exact podcast launch schedule, this many episodes week 1, this many episodes week 2, etc., etc. You want to have 8 episodes recorded, ready to go, was the trick I remember off the top of my head, but they lay that all out for you from there. Then step number 7 is actually going beyond the podcast itself, which is syndicating your podcast. You want to add an image, load your podcast inside of a video editor, add an image, and then render it out as a video if you didn't record the video when you were doing the interview. Put that up on YouTube, and you're now growing your YouTube channel, right? So that's number 1. Number 2, upload that video into Facebook if you do Facebook marketing. I don't do this because I don't do Facebook marketing. I don't want to be distracted on that platform. But if you have a fan page, if you have a group, if you have people who are connected to you and like your expertise there, it's a great way to give more of this audio, this content, the value that you've created directly to your people you're already connected with. Then you can transcribe it. So Temi.com, I think, is like 10 cents a minute. So it'd be like $3 to transcribe a 30-minute episode. Or Otter.ai. Otter.ai has more free up front, but its quality is a little less, and you might find spending like $2-3 on Temi will save you a half hour, and that may be worth it for you. And then you publish it to a WordPress blog. So the WordPress blog can be about $5 per month. You've got about $5, maybe $10 per month, depending on how much you're uploading on Libsyn, and you've got maybe $50 in hardware. You probably already have a phone. You probably already have a laptop. You may even have a microphone already. If not, there's some great sub $50 microphones listed on that for you. And that's it. Really, it is actually that simple. And sure, there's some nuances, there's skill building required, right? There's some competencies that you have to learn when you go down this path, but it's ultimately extremely simple. And once you're all launched and you're all set up on the different podcasting programs, on the different podcasting apps, at that point, you simply keep the machine fed with new content. How many episodes are you doing? 1 a week? Great. Every Wednesday could be your schedule, and you could just hit that and you could just run. Want to do 2 a week? Great. Want to do 1 every single day? Great. There are podcasters who have proven that doing an everyday podcast can be great for listenership growth. It doesn't ultimately really matter all that much. The big, big, big key in creating a successful podcast is your consistency over long periods of time. Joe Rogan has one of the most popular podcasts in the world. He started somewhere around 2009, 2010. At this point, he has 1,200 different episodes, which is something to the tune of 120 plus episodes per year, which is something to the tune of 10 or so episodes per month on average. I think he's doing more now than he was at the beginning, but 10 episodes a month is what, like 3 a week, roughly 2.5, 3 a week. So set yourself a schedule that is going to help you really stay consistent. Remember that the whole goal of this, the reason of running a podcast, is to create great, valuable content for your audience. And from there, you'll learn how to grow your audience and turn them into a list by offering something for free in exchange for their email, and ultimately can position you wonderfully as the expert so you can attract great clients to you by teaching wonderful, helpful information that your audience wants. If you have any questions, get at me in the comments below, but be sure to go visit the page, the post I created at milesbeckler.com/podcast. Has the whole launch schedule. It has direct links to all the microphone options. It's got links in it, videos that show you how to use those editing softwares I talked about. I hope this overview has been helpful. I thank you for your time. Like, share, subscribe, do what you do. I appreciate you, and I'll catch you on the next video. Till we connect again, be well.